Welcome to the Socially Unfiltered podcast,
where we'll be taking you along for our deep dives and doom scrolls through social media, entrepreneurship, and pop culture.
We're your hosts, Lex and Veronica, and together we're looking at everything through an unfiltered lens on the things that shape our everyday lives and society.
So grab a drink and get ready to explore the uncharted territories of online trends, share candid conversations, and uncover the stories behind the headlines.
This is the Socially Unfiltered podcast.
How's everyone? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you.
Happy birthday.
No, Benny, it's too early to start this. It's too early. We haven't even recorded yet. Natural state as we do. We yap for an hour before we record. So technically we're recording 3 episodes.
If you've ever wondered why we don't do like live streams or anything, it's because of that. Because the topic would quickly be lost.
Yeah, there was a lot going on before this. Anyways.
So today we're going to talk about content shoots because it's something that I think take a little bit to get used to. I don't even remember the first content shoot that I did at this point.
I do. It was at a bakery. One of my first clients. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was a child store, like a child clothing store. That was my first content shoot. Mm-hmm.
Did you like work with that? I don't remember you ever working with somebody like that. I mean, it was probably a long time ago, but
yeah, they were like my first client ever, and then the bakery was also my second client, and then I started working with the Clam Man. So they were my 3 clients. But yeah, it was like a child store. I was like a W2 social media manager, and let's just say that didn't go well.
Yeah, so that didn't last very long.
No, but I did like monthly content shoots, and it was not organized whatsoever. I just went in and did whatever.
Yep. Yeah, I don't remember who the first one I ever did was with, but I can only imagine that it was chaotic and probably not the same that I do now.
No, definitely not.
If it was with like my first client, well, I had a virtual client first that I never saw in person. But if it was my first one local to Charleston, it was probably the shoe store that's downtown. But that's as far back as my memory goes from prior to last week. So that's all I got. But yeah, I love them now. I think I was intimidated by them for a long time. And now I feel like they're so like second nature. And like figuring out just like where they fit into everything, like what you're even shooting the content about. There's a lot that goes into them that's not just showing up with your phone. So we'll kind of break down everything that we do before, during, after, how they work, what we take with us, how long they usually take, all of the above. So before a shoot even starts, we are spending some time figuring out exactly what content we will be getting at said shoot. Usually one of the first things I'll do is look at, if they have any like specials or events coming up, like just so we make sure we get like important days down. Also like any national holidays that fit in with the business. Like I'm doing a shoot on Friday for a chiropractor, and we start posting at the beginning of October, and October just happens to be National Spine Health Month. And I was like, oh, that's
perfect.
Literally perfect. Yeah. So not like we're going in being like, it is National Spine Health Month, but like obviously like focusing a bunch of content like on that specifically. So just looking at certain things that you will be getting. I go in with a full Google Doc where it's like, this is what we need. This was recorded. This, we still need to get who's in what shot, like just really breaking down like every possible piece of content we'll be getting that day.
Yeah, you want to set yourself up for success beforehand, because there's been many times in the beginning where you go into a shoot and you're like chaotically running around, and like they're expecting you to have content ideas and you're expecting them to have content ideas. And it is a collaboration, I think, because obviously if you're going to like a brick and mortar, like people need to be willing to be in the content. So you have to like make sure you communicate that with the owners or with whoever's going to be in your content. Make sure they're available. Make sure they're blocking time to be able to shoot the content with you. Otherwise, you're going to go in there and it's kind of going to be a waste of time if they're just wondering like who's going to be able to do it and when. So I think just planning beforehand is the most important part. Like sitting down and doing, like, I do the same exact process, like the national holidays, any specials they have going on, any promotions, that like the most important parts. And then you can come up with some fun ones or some voiceover content, like whatever other ideas you have. And depending on how many like photos and videos you need, depending on their package. But organization is key for sure, because if you don't communicate that beforehand and you just show up and they have nobody to take content with, like you'll just kind of be sitting there like, okay, well, we have no content. And that's happened before.
Or I've like gotten to a shoot and like if it's a product business, they like I've gotten to one where they expected me to be the person in the content. And I was like, oh no, 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 no. I'm on this side of the camera. Either you're in the content or there's just nobody in the content. Which obviously was like not a boundary, but a stipulation that should have been talked about beforehand. But obviously this was a long time ago, before really learning like how the businesses that I work with want to operate content shoots. And that's why I'm like kind of picky now with like what shoots I will take on, because I really only want to work with people who are willing to show up and willing to time block that into their calendar. There's obviously like content that you can do where it doesn't involve somebody like sitting down specifically for something. Like you could follow somebody around and do a day in the life. You could do like a opening the store with me, like closing the store with me. And that's just literally following somebody around doing what they would be doing anyway. But yeah, a lot of the places that I work with now, I make sure are very on board for the type of content we'll be making, because I do like to do like the funny, like, you know, kind of attention grabbing like trends and stuff. And I like to make sure that there are people who are on board for that. So yeah, that's another huge reason, just kind of planning everything out ahead of time. And I try to send it to my client that I'll be shooting with ahead of time so that they know everything to expect. And just kind of like a mix of everything. Like we'll go through and like plan 11/11. We'll go through and like plan a mix of like the educational content where it's like maybe them talking about their services, or, you know, here's where we're located. Like here's how to find us, like from street parking, whatever. Like there's, you know, a good mix of showcasing and promotional and educational and trends, a little bit of everything that goes into a shoot, at least for the ones that we're doing. So,
Yeah. Same here. And I think you made a good point where like you want to make sure these people that you're shooting with are going to be comfortable in content, because there have been so many shoots that I've been at and they're like, I don't want to be in content, or like, don't post me on social media. Oh, I didn't like do my makeup today, or like things like that are going to come up that you have to nip in the bud like beforehand. Otherwise you're showing up there and you're like, great, so the people I relied on for this content aren't available, and it's a huge waste of your time. So definitely choosing clients who are comfortable, who have the personality also. Like, I know like anyone can kind of be in content, but it doesn't mean it's going to do anything if they aren't in it, if that makes sense. Like if they just don't have like the enthusiasm or the want to be in content, and it shows. Like there's a lot of content that I've shot and it's like seems forced because they're not wanting to do it. So I just think it's like, as a business owner, you do almost have to become a content creator. And that's really tough now, because I know you start your business because you want to be running your business and like working in your business. You didn't sign up to be a content creator, but like it's 2024 going into 2025. Content's not going anywhere. Social media is not going anywhere. So I think it's just like embracing the changes that are happening with social instead of like pushing back, because the more you push back and not get with like the social media times, I think it's going to harm your business, if anything. So yeah, as a social media manager, being picky with who you're taking on and working with, because that's important. If they're not willing to do any content, like you have to almost just be honest with them and be like, we're not going to get anywhere if you're not going to supply me any content, or you're not willing to do any content shoots. Like that's just the reality of it. And as a business owner, like be open to it, because like your social media manager can't be everything in your business. They can't be like the model, the content creator, the social media manager. It's a lot, and they shouldn't be the ones that are in your content. Like,
Unless you're being paid extra for that UGC
right,
fee.
unless you want
But
to be doing
right.
UGC.
But yeah, I mean, there's just a million different things to expect that are good to be on the same page with these people about before you show up to the shoot, because when you do show up to the shoot, it's hard to explain how they all work or like what the workflow of all of them are, because it's way different if you're like showing up to shoot an event or if you're showing up to help somebody shoot like speaking videos. Like there's a million different ways it can go. But I think the kind of timeline that we both follow is, you know, beforehand, we make sure we know exactly where we're going and what we're doing and the location and the time, and make sure everybody that's going to be there is on board for it. And then when we do get there, I think there's a quick little like scope out moment, just make sure like everything is where it's supposed to be. And usually like a lot of the people that I work with, like they obviously know when these shoots are happening. So they'll spend a little extra time like cleaning up their store, like putting their best sellers like out, or like, you know, the flower shop I work with, if they know I'm coming, they add extra bouquets of flowers like to their flower wall so it doesn't like look like it's been picked at all day. Not that they wouldn't restock it normally anyway, but I'm usually coming like towards the end of the day when they would just be pulling everything down anyway. So again, like quick little scope out when you get there, just make sure everything looks okay. I mean, I know all of my clients are like literally move and change and do whatever it is that you need to do. So I'll just kind of make sure everything is where I want it. Quick check in with everybody, just make sure they're all on the same page. And then, yeah, we get to work like immediately and pack in as much content as we possibly can. So just again, making sure everybody's on the same page, showing up, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be. And then you can follow the doc that you made ahead of time and start shooting. Cause I think the worst thing is like, especially with like product based stores, I think it does seem as easy as just showing up and being like, okay, I'm just going to record all of the new arrivals. And it's like, you're just going to record them like, you know, for a clothing store, like, oh, just hanging like on a hanger, like not very riveting, kind of basic. I mean, obvious basic shot to have, yes, but I think it's important too to plan out different things. And again, this is where like, you know, the education part comes in. Like if their new shirt is made with a certain material, like have the owner explain that, and that then turns it into a more engaging piece of content than just the new arrival being filmed. So lots of different ways to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page and what to expect. And I think just, again, brainstorming all of the different ways you can work with their content or their products to make content. That's obviously if it's product based. If it's an event, same thing, but a little bit different. Like anytime I've ever shot an event, like I show up, see exactly where it is. If it's like a bigger event, I make sure that like I have access to like all of the different places that I need to go, like make sure there's not anywhere you're not supposed to go. Obviously, just like respecting the boundaries of the place that you are doing the shoot at.
When you are at the shoot, like with your like Google Doc that you have, make sure that you're like organizing where you're going to go as well. Like you don't want to go run from one room and do a trend over there to then run to the next room and do like a voiceover piece over there, and then like you're gonna go do your educational content, and then you're like kind of like scattered. Like make sure that what you're planning content wise is like, okay, in this area we're gonna film these 2 videos and get that done. Then in this area we're gonna go and do like these 3 pieces of content and get that done with the same people. So then you're almost not like everyone's not all over the place and running around, because I've noticed that a lot too, is people are running out of time because they're just everywhere. Like they're going upstairs for something, they're going downstairs for something. And I get like sometimes you need different shots, but just make sure that your overall area, I guess, you're covering what you need content wise in specific areas. So then you can save time at those content shoots. Just like utilize your time better with everybody as well. Make sure it's planned in that way. And I know sometimes that can be hard.
Amazing point. And then also too, that works with people too. So like if you're shooting with a bunch of people and like, you know, you'll need these 3 voiceovers from this one person, like do them all with that person and then move on to the next person, especially like if I really only give examples from like stuff that I have experience with. So like the wedding floral person shop that I work with, like when I get there, it's like, okay, I get everything that I need from the owner. And then I kind of move on to like the people assisting her. So that way I know I
Mhm.
got everything that I needed from her. And then everything else from that is obviously just
Yeah.
bonus or like who else you're planning for. But yes, I think breaking it up kind of like by location, by person, by product, like organizing yourself in that way obviously is going to be
Mhm.
extremely helpful day of, so that exactly like you said, you're not running around like a maniac trying to figure out what do I need
Yeah.
next and where did this person go and oh my god, I forgot this clip of this place. Yeah. And it can be, I mean, as long as we've been doing this, I know there's times where I leave shoots and I'm like, fuck, like I
Mhm.
completely forgot to get that last shot, or like I'll start like a transition and completely forget the second part. Like it just happens. It just
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, and I feel like this is honestly the perfect transition for what to bring to your shoot because obviously like we bring a lot of things with us, but we
Mhm.
can't necessarily lug them all around with us, and especially for running around from shot to shot and place to place,
Mhm.
like you want to be strategic with your shooting places and people because
Mhm.
you are going to have like a couple things with you in hand. Like we both have two of our phones with us. We bring tripods with us or stabilizers, mini
Mhm.
microphones. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes I like print things out for myself just to like physically
Mhm.
have it on hand.
Yep.
Sometimes people bring cameras with them. If you're like a social media manager who offers like photography, like you might be bringing your camera. There's going to be ring lights and lighting and like
Mhm.
different things that you're going to be bringing with you. So you don't really want to be lugging around all of this stuff like back and
Mhm.
forth. So make sure you're shooting in one location. You can set your stuff down and like have it there for a little bit, and then
Mhm.
you can then move around. But I feel like I don't know. For me, I keep it pretty basic. Like I have my attached ring light, my work phone, my tripod, and then a
Mhm.
mini microphone, and then an
Mhm.
extra charger.
Mhm.
Always on like a portable charger. I always have on
Mhm.
hand with me. But other than that, I don't
I
think
mean,
I, like,
that's
really use any other stuff. I keep it, like, basic.
mhm. Yeah, like equipment wise, I think that's I'm literally like thinking about what's in my bag right now. That's pretty
Yeah.
much it. Like little oh, you said like the ring light that like you put on your phone. Sometimes I'll bring
The
like a
big one.
bigger one. Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
like anything product wise or like if I know there will be like close up shots,
Mhm.
but obviously outdoors it's not like super necessary. Yeah, definitely tripods. I mean, a crossbody like bag is my best friend on
Yeah.
shoot days because as long as both of my phones are like near me
Get you
at
one of
all times.
these.
Yes,
One of these
exactly.
babies.
Mhm.
Hair
Yep. Those.
tie,
Mhm. Yep. Make sure you always
chapstick,
know
hair
what that is.
tie,
Yes. Oh yeah,
a
I have a little
snack.
like oh shit kit. Yeah, with like band-aids, like pressed powder, contact solution. Like I have the most like random little like bag of stuff
Mhm.
that comes with me everywhere. But yeah, equipment wise, that's pretty much it. And I mean, that's again like the most basic way. Like when I first started, I was bringing like my actual camera to shoots, and
Mhm.
obviously there's a different look with it, and some people prefer the real camera look. Some people are obviously just okay with the iPhone content, but as time went on, I realized that it wasn't 100% necessary for all of the shoots that I was doing. Like a lot of the shoots I was doing did like the trends and stuff on reels. Like they just come off better when it's on an iPhone. It doesn't need to be like on your crazy
Yeah.
professional camera or anything. Obviously, if that's your style, that's completely fine.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, when I stopped bringing like my real camera to shoots, like my bag got significantly smaller. Like it was no longer bringing
Mhm.
like the big stabilizer or the big tripod or extra batteries or the case. Like it is literally just my iPhone now.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll bring headphones. I know that's like super random, but I have been in situations like sometimes like in louder environments when you're trying to like record certain pieces for like different trends or something. And if you maybe can't hear the audio, like I'll put the headphone in and be like, okay, like this is how long this clip needs to be, or like
Mhm.
just something to think about. I usually don't need them, but just something to think about. And also like on days like when I've shot like weddings and stuff, when I'm there for like 6 hours, like hell yeah, I put those headphones in and have a podcast playing like when I'm not needed for like
Mhm.
45 minutes. So definitely something to think about. But yeah, I think equipment wise, that's pretty much everything. We don't really need anything super crazy for just the shoots
No.
that we do,
No.
which is nice.
Yeah, and then any extra stuff, I think it's just like snacks, your water, hair tie, hair
Mhm.
clip, like
Mhm.
emergency stuff, like little things that I feel like you would bring if it's a long shoot.
Yeah.
But if it's a shorter shoot, like I think you're fine. But there have been shoots that we both have done, like wedding, and like I
Mhm.
had a shoot for a florist and I didn't pack my snacks. And I was like, I am ravenous right now
It was
because
a
I've been
bad
here for
day.
like 5 hours and haven't eaten anything or drank anything. So I learned
Right.
for the second shoot to bring snacks and water and I was fine. But you'll live and you'll learn. So it's little
Mhm.
stuff like that that'll like keep you going.
Going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not
Sunglasses
rocket
if
science.
it's
Like,
outside.
oh my God, I forgot my sunglasses that day
I know.
too. That first shoot. Oh my God. Yeah. Don't forget sunglasses if your shoot is outside because
Mhm.
that's the worst. And I usually never do. I was like, fuck me. And
It's
of
a
course,
rough
the second one that I brought them to, it was all indoors. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
And windy.
great. Yeah. And windy. So yeah, I
But
feel like
yeah.
that's the basics. You don't need too much
Mhm.
and just dependent on what your client wants or needs.
Mhm.
And I think that brings us to like how long your shoot should be too. It just all depends on your client. If it's like a one-off service and you need
Mhm.
like a month supply of content, like I've done a month supply of content in an hour, but it might be
Mhm.
different for you depending on the content that you need. It also depends on the client. Like
Mhm.
say a hairdresser, like that's you're going to get one client in an hour and a half, which is like no content at all. So it just
Right.
depends on like who the client is versus like this bakery that I've been shooting with, like they just have stuff ready. So in an hour,
Mhm.
I'm capturing like 8 reels for them because
Right.
everything's just ready and there. So I think it just depends on the client, the product, the service, how long things take.
Mhm. I would say
Um,
pretty on average though, like I plan to be at a shoot for like 2 to 3 hours. Like
yeah.
pretty average just because and we'll get into this just because of how often we're doing these shoots or like the type of content that's involved. Because exactly like you said, like with the hairstylist, it's hard because yeah, they see one client for like 5 to 6 hours at a time. So I always try to plan
Mhm.
like with my hair girl, we'll schedule like 30 minutes or an hour before the appointment and get some extra content. Like I've gotten like her setting up for the appointment and then it's kind of a different view of that same
Mhm.
person or like we'll do a couple trends or like I'll have her do like an open the salon with me. Like it's all about like budgeting your time basically, like
Yeah.
knowing, if you're going to
Like
be there
how
for
much
a long time.
content can you make in that time frame
Yeah.
that's gonna get you through, like, a couple weeks of
Yes.
content, and it's gonna be different because obviously,
Mhm.
yeah, you're there for, like, 6 hours filming the same person.
Mhm.
So it's yeah, that's definitely tough. All of my shoots right now, just because of, like, who the businesses are, they're, like, an
Mhm.
hour because
Yeah.
it does everything's already out and ready for me, and
Mhm.
the people are there, so it just, like, is quicker, but there
Mhm.
have been when I worked with a salon, I was there for, like, 4 hours because it
Mhm.
just everything took a lot longer. So, yeah,
Right.
I think it just depends, and, like,
Mhm.
charging for that, I feel like you have to just figure out how long it'll take you, how much content you have to
Mhm.
produce from it, how many revisions there are gonna be. So we'll
Mhm.
get into that too, but typically turnaround times, like, if it's a one-off shoot, I try to get it to them within, like, 3 days if it's
Mhm.
just, like, a one-off thing, but, I mean, if it's, like, a monthly client, can take up to, like, a week with a
Mhm.
month worth of content,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, because
that's
it just
fun.
depends on, like, how yeah, like, the amount of content that you're editing. Because I mean, even for, like, my cons my god, recurring clients, words are so hard today. Like, for my recurring clients, like, we'll do a shoot, but I don't necessarily, like, edit everything at once and send it to them. It's more so like our bank that I pull from, like as I'm
Yeah.
batching out like a week or two of content at a time. But then like last week I did a shoot where I didn't have to edit anything afterwards. She literally just wanted the raw like photos
Mhm.
and videos. And I still went through and just like made sure I wasn't sending her like accidental clips that I took of me like walking or like, I'll be recording my own content like in the middle of like a day in the life or
Yeah.
whatever. So like I go through and just make sure I'm not like sending those or like I'll do a little editing to some of the photos. But like for that, like I literally that event was at 5 p.m. on a Thursday and I sent her the album by 9 a.m. on Friday. Like it was
Yeah.
just super quick. Like everything's in the album. Here it is. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, when you're doing like like a standalone shoot, like they're not your management client and it's not just that they want like the raw photos and videos, yeah, I usually say within a week. Like I try to just say like you'll have everything back within a week, and then that kind of gives me time to make sure that I'm getting, everything done, but also
Mhm.
gives them some time to, once it's delivered to them, they have some time to kind of go through and see if there's anything that needs to be edited or revised. And that's something that you will have to put like in your agreements with your shoots, because it's definitely tough when you have the person come back to you and say, I need point one of this video edited, and can you replace this 0.2 second long video with this 0.3 second long, like it can be a lot sometimes. So I
Yeah.
like to include how long we'll spend in the editing process, or if they need any revisions. Like I usually tell them they have within a week of it being delivered to let me know. And then for me, those are really the only round of revisions that I'll do for like the one-off content shoots.
Mhm.
Like if we can't fix it after one revision, then I hate to say it like this, but like I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Like it just is what it is. Like if you don't get what you need
This
after
won't
one
work.
round,
This
yeah,
partnership
then
just
like
won't
it's just
work.
not gonna work. Yeah.
I had
'Cause
like a client like that, and well, I was just editing videos for her.
Mhm.
She was a
Mm.
DJ, and I was just editing videos for her. And when you hire somebody, like you're trusting them to do their
Mhm.
job and you do your job. And I would
Mhm.
supply the content. I would allow for 2 edits. We would have 2 edits, and it would still not be like, and it was down to like this video 0.3, this video
Mhm.
at 0.45 seconds, this video play for 0.39 like I'm not even joking, that is what it
It's
was. And I
so
was
much.
like, at this point this took you way longer to type all that out, how long you
Yeah.
need each video to play, that you may as well just edit it yourself. And that's what I
Mhm.
have to say. So there's going to be times, I think, that like you come across clients that maybe are like that and just want the control. And at that point, I think, yeah, you just acknowledge like, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. Like, I don't think we're, I don't
This
know,
isn't a good
working well
fit.
together. It's not a good fit. And that's okay. You're not for everyone and everyone's not for you. And I think that's okay to admit. And that's fine. Your editing style may not be up to their standard or whatever. And that's fine. And I was
Mhm.
like, listen, I think it's going to be easier for you to just edit how you want it instead
Mhm.
of, but I'm like, I know what works best on social media. Like I'm editing
Right.
it for the way that I know will be perceived by your target audience.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, that didn't work out. But there's going to be times when like, yeah, you're going to have to talk about those boundaries. Honestly, next week we're talking about client expectations. So this will
Mhm.
be a perfect little detour for us to talk about that stuff. So listen next
Yes.
week for us to cover that.
And then, so when it comes to shoots, I mean, obviously, again, there's the boundaries that you want to put in place, like the edits and the revisions and stuff. And this kind of brings us into how often are we doing content shoots? And like everything that we always say, there's a million different ways and a million different reasons. Like how often you're doing a shoot really depends on how much content you're getting during it, what's written in your agreement with this client. Are they a one-off content shoot or are they a recurring client? I know for me personally, basically all of my clients are on a once a month content shoot basis. There's definitely times where we end up with way more content than we actually need, but it lets me know, like, let's say there was a trend that we recorded last time that by the time we went to post it, it just wasn't really trending anymore. Like, trend kind of took a new turn, doesn't mean the same thing anymore, not something we want to post. Like, I know that we have kind of like those backup pieces of content to pull through. So I never mind if we're getting more content than we need, but it also just lets me know like we can constantly have like the updated and most, again, like up to date content that we can possibly have. I know some people will do like quarterly. Like I literally just did my first shoot with somebody who has me doing shoots for them quarterly, and that's it. Like she's not a management client. It's literally just every 3 months I come record an event for her, and that's that. And I mean, it again, I think depends on a million different things, but it's also whatever your client is kind of letting you know that they need. Like that girl told me, she knew right off the bat, I need you every 3 months. And I was able to say yes to that. Because it also depends on how many people you're working with. Like if you're working with 10 people and it's impossible, well, it's not impossible, but it's a huge pain in the ass to do 10 plus content shoots a month. So if that was the case, I would say maybe batch enough that you're coming every other month or quarterly. It's kind of just up to you and what works best for you. I just know for how closely I work with a lot of my clients, I like to give them fresh content once a month. And then that also kind of helps us too. Like we don't have to go in knowing like, okay, here's everything we're posting for the next 3 months. Not that that's a bad thing, but it just helps me to kind of know not only will we be able to have the most up-to-date content, but we also know, we're not spending 4, 5, 6 hours on a huge shoot one day to last us for the next 3 months. So once a month is usually what works the best for me and my recurring clients, at least.
Yeah, that's what I do too. But some clients aren't local, so we don't obviously include that in our package. But it's also tricky with those types of clients, or even ones that are local to you and they don't want to do a content shoot. It's like more than 99% of the time, I feel like they aren't supplying you content. Like they say
Right.
they will, they say they can upload content, but when it
Mhm.
comes down to it, like they don't. And then you're stuck with no content. You're not
Mhm.
producing results for them because you have no content. It becomes a whole thing. They end up dropping social media management because they see how much work it is. So
Mhm.
I almost like won't even take on a local client anymore if they don't add content shoots unless I
Mhm.
know them or like I know that they're like one of my
Capable.
clients who I don't have a content shoot with, I know her and she supplies me content, so like I trust her in that, but there's a lot of people that think they can take that on and they can't,
Yeah.
and I just really highly recommend telling them that like this is included in your package and you have to choose a package with a content shoot because as much as
Mhm.
they think they're going to do the content, if they never have, and that's why they're inquiring with you, they're not gonna now. Like
Mhm.
when's the last time you shot content?
Yeah.
You haven't. So I just think that's worth having the conversation too, because
Mhm.
that's just what I've found working with local clients that don't do a content
Mhm.
shoot package.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's obviously pros and cons to people doing them and not doing them, and exactly like you said, you have to, like, really trust that they're going to supply the content that you need, and, I mean, obviously, sometimes it's just a budget thing, and we'll talk more about, like, pricing of all of this stuff in a second, but, obviously, it can be a budget thing for them, but I
Mhm.
think it's super helpful, I think, to kinda gauge that, like, based on what they're posting on social media now, like, if
Mhm.
they are actively posting 3 to 4 times a week and you see that it's, like, all fresh content, like, they either know that that's something that they have to keep up with, or they know how to kinda, like, batch all of that and send it over to you, but, yeah, it's definitely a huge game of trust that you put into
Yeah.
people that aren't including content shoots, and I think it's definitely possible as long as you find those ones that are, like, really willing to do it.
Yeah.
Like, with the rebrand that I took on, one of the first things I remember us talking about is I was like, "Yeah, like, I'm trusting her to do all of the content," but I knew from previous experience with her, she never had a problem recording
Right.
the content. It was just not getting stuff up to her standard a lot of the time. Like, she would watch it, and what I mean by that, she knows all this. Like, she would watch a video back and be like, "Oh my god, you can see the cable outlet on the floor." And I'm like, "Okay, well, we gotta get over the cable outlet on the floor because I'm not throwing away this whole video just because you can see a cord in the background."
Yeah.
And that's something too, like, you obviously can take the time to, teach your clients how you expect them to deliver the content. I've even gone through and been like, "Okay, like a selfie video being like, okay, hold your phone right here and you're going to get like from the top and from the bottom." Like when Shelby and I were planning out the whole like tombstone video, like it literally was me being like, okay, hold your phone right here and have everybody throw the flowers. And then from farther back, you're going to do it again so we can have the different angles. Like sometimes people just need to literally be instructed. And I work with some people in a way where I'm sending them like the actual content plan. Like I'm not just like sitting there waiting for them to send me something. Like I will send them and be like, "Okay, you need to do this video and it needs to show this." And that's obviously a different service. Like that's for somebody that I don't include content shoots with, but part of our agreement was I would supply that with them. And from what I know of them, they are able to follow a checklist. And that's really all that I need from you to get that content to me. So, yeah, definitely lots of pros and cons. I mean, I think a huge con of not including them is that you don't get to be like fully in control of the content that you're getting. And that can be like very stressful. So, just relying on somebody else to get it can definitely be stressful.
It is, because like you may have a plan of when you're going to be planning their content and want things edited by and sending approvals, and you might not get that content, and then it pushes you back and just
Mhm.
makes it really hard. Because I just had a client like that I just didn't get content for weeks, and it just
Mhm.
like doesn't make you proud of that work either, because it's
Right.
not your best work. So it's hard to use them as like an example for testimonial, or like
Mhm.
to showcase your work, because it's not your work. So I think that's definitely a con to that as well. I would always prefer like doing the content, because
Same.
like you said, it's like over explaining and having to direct them, which is totally fine. Like we can
Mhm.
do that. It's just like when you're in there, it's so much like better timing wise for everybody to be
Mhm.
able to just be there and like instruct them and tell them what to do, and like you're the one filming and you can get the certain angles that you need, because it's never
Mhm.
going to be exactly what you want.
Mhm. Oh,
So
and the
yeah, I just think
transferring of content is the worst. Like, I mean, a shared album on iPhone is literally my best friend, but like I've had people who want to shoot it. Well, you have too. Like they want it to be like from a certain camera. So then it's going into Drive and then you have to spend the time downloading it. And I have people
mhm,
send me videos that literally the gigabytes of them are bigger than our podcast episodes. And I'm like, oh my God, this would have been a 4-second video if I just did this
yeah,
quick. Like it's a lot and it's definitely stressful. And like you said, it's never gonna be exactly what you want it to be, but it's the effort is there and that can be appreciated, I think.
mhm,
But I mean, some options too, like the chiropractor that I just started working with, we aren't including every single month a content shoot. We are shooting this week and hopefully that will be enough for the next like 2 to 3 months realistically, just with everything that we have planned out and how much time we're planning to be there for, but it's going to be just like a, hey, we're kind of running out of content. Like, I think we should schedule another shoot. Like, it doesn't always have to be something that's included every single month. It can be something that just kind of gets added on whenever you need it. And again, we'll talk about like pricing and stuff and like how it fits into packages. But yeah, definitely so many pros and cons. I mean, pros, you're obviously saving your time. Like it's not you having to go and like get all of the content. And as long as they're actually supplying it to you, that's huge time
yeah,
saver on your end. But that's
mhm,
coming with, the expectation that it's exactly what you need and exactly what you want. And yeah, it's just hard not being there, being the one getting that content for sure.
yeah, it's definitely difficult.
Hmm. Not my control issues showing.
Okay, now we want to get into pricing and how we include them in management packages.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
dive
I
into
feel like
that.
everyone's pricing is different, and again, it's going to be based on how many shoots you're going to, how long
Hmm.
your shoots are going to be, how much content that you're supplying your
Hmm.
clients. Like, I feel like, I don't know, even now, like, my pricing is different with like one off clients
Oh
versus
yeah.
like my management package clients, because I feel like the management package clients, since they're like recurring, I do it cheaper than I would for a one off
Mhm. Yeah,
client.
same. But, like, pricing wise, like, of shoots in general,
Yeah.
I think again, it's hard to give the exact number, but exactly like you said, like, if it's a one-off shoot, it's gonna be X amount, and if it's a recurring one with my clients, then it's a little bit lower than X amount because exactly like you said, it's recurring. It's almost like they just have you on a retainer. I mean, even if somebody were to just like with the girl that I'm doing the quarterly shoots with, like I did give her a little bit of a lower price than what a just random one-off shoot is because I know that I have 4 of those booked for the next year. So it makes sense to me to just kind of do like that bundled pricing of it. But exactly like you said, I think it depends on so many different things. But I think a really good, like, kind of rule of thumb is you start with your base package, and that can be your one off shoot. And for me, what that means is they get the most basic coverage. It's a shared iPhone album with just the videos and the pictures. Like I said before, like, there's no edited reels put together. It's like, do you just need coverage of this day, and then you can have the content to do whatever you want to do with it. Then it kind of goes up from there. Like, how many deliverables do you need? Like, do you need 12 finished posts? Do you need, coverage for 6 hours that day? Like, it goes up from there based on the amount of time and the amount of deliverables that will be being sent to them.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good like rule of thumb, and maybe to give people an idea of pricing, like it really can range, and also like depending on where you live. But like we've talked about before, me and you, like we had our conversation of like they can kind of hire like any content creator with an iPhone. Like we're not doing anything that crazy with our content shoots. Like we're not doing videography and like photography. Like we have our iPhone, and obviously we know how to make it look good and like the angles and like what trends we want to do, and we definitely are worth the pricing we're charging. I just mean like you can't be outrageous in your pricing where you're charging like $2,000 a month for like a content shoot. Like I
with
think
your
maybe,
iPhone, not editing anything. Yeah.
no, if it's like, I don't know, say an hour, you almost want to set like your base hourly rate. Not saying you're charging by the hour, but like set a base hourly rate where like you're like, okay, I feel good that like if I'm here, this is what I'm making. And then maybe taking into account like the editing time, the driving time, like just traveling there and back. Like I charge for the gas mileage. Like you can do that as well. But I feel like a base, you could start between like 300 to 500 if you're new, and like depending on how many pieces of content you're going to be delivering. Like I've been on a package recently with a client for $1,000 a month, and I'm delivering them like 30 photos, 4 edited reels, and I'm there for like an hour and a half. That's definitely on like the higher side, but I don't know. I feel like it's all just dependent, but that's like an example, I guess. Like I don't think I would do anything under like $300 or $400.
Oh yeah, for sure. At least a couple $100 for even just the one-off where you're even just returning an album of raw video and raw photos. I mean, when you think about it, we are nothing like hiring a photographer. Like we're nothing like hiring a videographer. They know, I don't want to say they know exactly like their job there, but with ours, it's like we could be delivering like 100 to 200 raw videos, like just random clips of the entire day that you can then make millions of different pieces of content from.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not just about paying a couple $100s for somebody to show up and record with their iPhone. Like exactly like we said in our conversation, like she could find anybody to come stand around with an iPhone for $50 an hour.
Yeah.
But it's way different when the person going in kind of approaches it a little bit different. Like we aren't going in just being like, oh, here's your one iPhone video of the entire event. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And my photographer and videographer example maybe wasn't the best, but more so what I meant by that is usually a videographer is returning like one final product. They're not returning this whole iPhone album that they can reuse in a million different ways. And again, we are not videographers. They have a very special place for the job that they do. I just think what we deliver can be used so many different times that it's not just about paying somebody to hold an iPhone. It is exactly like you said, getting the certain angles, getting the certain products. Like for the shoot that I did last week, it was for the launch of a skincare company. And she was like, I want coverage like of the event, but I also want to showcase like each of the products. So I made sure to showcase the entire event, and then also took each individual product and set my tripod up and did like an unboxing and like showing each of the products, whereas somebody else may not do that. So I think pricing wise, it's justified like what we charge. And again, it gets obviously more expensive the more deliverables they're adding on, which is why for me, like that basic album of just returning it to you, because there's not a ton of like editing anything on my end. I think it kind of the pricing goes up from there, just like depending on how many finished deliverables you're giving. But I think 300 to 500 for that like base just coverage is pretty average, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I was even like talking to a wedding content creator like for our wedding, and we were just like looking at her packages, and one of them is like 575 for 6 hours of coverage, which honestly, like breaking that up, like I feel like it should be more with like the amount of
Mhm.
hours you're spending there, and then we get one edited reel, edited photos, like all the raw photos.
Mhm.
Um there was like some other stuff included. It was like a ton of stuff included. So
Mhm.
you could also like look at what other people are charging for their content shoots in your industry, like just to, that's obviously a wedding content shoot. It's
Mhm.
different than social media management working with a business.
Yeah.
But like coming in with a plan as well. I also think you have to, like we talked about, you're planning all this stuff and organizing all this stuff in the beginning and getting all these people situated and the product situated. Like you have to take into account that as well, like as part of your work, that
Yes.
most people can't do that stuff. Like they don't know how to come up with ideas. They don't know how to
Mhm.
shoot. So it's not saying like, oh, anyone with an iPhone can come in there and you can't charge like crazy pricing, but like it's all the planning beforehand too, and
Mhm.
all the organization that you do and what happens after. It's not just like being there with
Mhm.
an iPhone and shooting the content. It's
Mhm.
everything that comes from your creative brain and your skills. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think justify but a couple hundred. And then if they're getting up to like needing 8 reels or something like that, like a couple thousand because you're doing a lot of work.
Mhm.
So I just think it's like trial and error. Like the past content shoots that I've had, like one offs, I'm definitely undercharging, but it's my first time
Mhm.
shooting like this type of content. So I'm like, I'm just
Right.
getting experience. So I was definitely undercharging a little bit. And that's a learning curve. And you can just learn that next time, like, okay,
Mhm.
I'll probably increase my pricing because of the amount of work it is. Like, you also don't know what you don't know. Like, go in there, see how much
Right.
work it is, see how long it's going to take you. And like, it is a lot of work. And then you realize you're like, okay, I'm not charging enough for this, for the amount of work
Mhm.
I'm doing. So you can always tweak it and express
Yeah.
that to your client like, hey, pricing's going up because I actually evaluated how much work this is going to take me, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah, and I mean, that's still I mean, you don't know until you know, and
yeah.
just because, we've been doing this for a long time, there's still stuff that we don't know. I mean, even, I worked with somebody for a long time, and some of their shoots were, like, 2 hours away, like, because it was a wedding, and it was coverage of the wedding, and it's not like I can be like, "Oh, like, this day doesn't work for me." Like, I learned
Right.
very quickly with that person that I don't wanna say what I was charging them for their shoots wasn't, like, accurate, but I definitely needed to, like, tweak around some things, and, like, she knew. I was like, if there's a month where our shoot is 2 hours away, like, to kind of counter that, like, I'll just do one less post, and she was like, "Great, love that." So, like,
Mhm.
if the shoot is a little bit farther away, it's not me having to be like, "Hey, like, this is an extended, like, travel fee." I would just take away one of her posts, but obviously that was very different because it was, like, a full management client. But exactly like you said before, like considering in like, your travel costs and your travel time, and you can choose to put on there like, it's X amount within X miles of X location, or you can put on there like it's X amount for every mile away from, like, it's totally up to you like how you end up
Mhm.
doing that, but it is something to consider if you will be traveling for these shoots. How far away are they? What is your commute time? And exactly like you said, all of the planning beforehand. Like, it's even if the event is an hour and a half long, like it's going to take like 3 to 4 hours of your time over the course of a few days between planning, travel, editing, all of that
Yep.
stuff. So there's so much that goes into it. And yeah, there's pros and cons of literally every single way. And I just think what you said is so perfect. Like, you don't know until you know. And
Mhm.
once you've done that first shoot, you could be like, oh my God, like, I need to charge way more for this. Or like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's just always something that will pop up. Literally
And
always.
sometimes it's hard too cuz like for this I'm shooting with like a florist for wedding content creation, and so you have these, I had 2 shoots and I'm like, okay, well, I told her a certain price, so I think that's
Mhm.
where it's hard to, like, almost increase your price for, like, the 3rd shoot because we do have another shoot in October coming up, and I'm like, "Okay, increasing pricing for a 3rd shoot after I told you this pricing," and it's kind
Mhm.
of almost like I don't feel right doing, but at the end of the day, like I am new to this type of industry, like shooting
Mhm.
wedding, which I haven't
Mhm.
done. I'm shooting businesses most of the time. So
Right.
I think that's where it's a little bit of a challenge for me too, is like, okay, approaching it with like, I should be charging more because I do see the amount of work it is, but also wanting the experience and not wanting to like
Mhm.
not work with that person anymore because of a
Right.
price increase. Like maybe they chose me because of my pricing compared to
Mhm.
somebody else. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm trying to still like navigate that too of like when it's appropriate to increase your pricing. Like I don't think it is after only 2 shoots.
It's a learning curve for sure. And yeah, I think you're always going to be learning something, and I mean, like we've said a million times just in this episode, everything is always so different. Like what you come up with for this shoot for October, like if you do decide to change, like it could all literally change with a different industry, or like say you do another one-off shoot, like it could be totally different. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have like some sort of consistency like in the services that you're offering, but it is very different based on the situation. And
Mhm.
yeah, sometimes it just takes you a couple times of really learning what works best for you.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to admit that you're like sometimes undercharging or
Mhm.
whatever. Like it's okay. We've been in business for so many years. Like almost 4 years for me, and I know like 7 or 8 years for you, like, in business. It's like we're still learning things all the time, and I will never be the one to say we know everything. Like,
Mm-mm.
it's still a learning curve because there's new services and new packages and, like, new ways of doing things that we have to learn as
Mhm.
well. So, I just think being in it and, like, having that firsthand experience is gonna help a ton
Mhm.
and just see what is going to work for you and financially what's going to help your business, because at the end of the day you have to think about taxes and like your expenses, and
Mhm.
if you're charging enough based on that, like after taxes and expenses, are you happy with your revenue?
Right.
So
Yep. Always a learning
take that
curve
into account.
for
Yep.
sure. Well,
Yep. That
I think
wraps
that's our content shoot for today.
Yeah. Hope that helped. Let us
Yeah.
know if you have any questions. You can always message either of us or the podcast page with any questions, or if you like need help with anything, let us know.
Mhm. Yes. Let
And
us
we'll see
know.
you next week to chat all things client expectations.
Yes, we will talk to you next week. Thanks for joining us today, and hang out with us on Instagram in the meantime.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for hanging. If you aren't sick of us yet, jump over to the Socially Unfiltered Pod Instagram.
Check out the social media manager blueprint,
And everything else you'll need can be found in the show notes.
and we'll see you next Monday.